stuff, go to foxandfriends.com and click on the Mega Morning Deals, and you'll be able to get some good deals.
All right, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Go catch Brian on the radio.
Stay within yourself.
Come on, pet me.
Hey guys, good morning everybody. 9 o'clock here in New York City, and Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, with a strong warning about Iran. He says that regime is lying. This follows a day where Benjamin Netanyahu issued the same call, revealing documents that extend for thousands of pages right now in Israel. So they're making their case in the Middle East, and they're making the case in the White House as well. As we say, good morning everybody. I'm Bill Hemmer, live today in Studio F for a very special day. We'll explain that in a moment. We got a big event tonight here on the Fox News Channel. And Sandra, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Bill Hemmer. Well, I'm Sandra Smith on the other side of America's newsroom this morning right here in Studio N. Netanyahu slamming Iran's rogue regime, saying it has gone to great lengths to hide its efforts to continue its nuclear program, claiming that the original deal is built on lies. Soon after President Trump addressed whether he's pulling the U.S. out of that deal.
They lied. One item after the other. They lied to the International Atomic Energy Agency, and they were supposed to come clean. That was the premise of the deal. So the deal was flawed from the start.
That is just not an acceptable situation. And I've been saying that's happening. They're not sitting back idly.
Kevin Corke is live from the White House this morning. Kevin, some have suggested that Prime Minister Netanyahu was speaking to a party of one in that presentation yesterday, that being the President of the United States. Was that message received?
I don't think there's any question that was the case, and yes, loudly and clearly it was certainly received. And I would say that that's somewhat relevant because as the clock continues to race toward that March 12th deadline, that's the time when we can learn whether or not the president does make the determination to withdraw the U.S. from the accord or remain in it. Well, listen, this was a full-throated pitch to the commander-in-chief, who has made no secret of his desire to scrap the deal. But what is less clear, Sandra, is what that might look like. Will the deal be scrapped altogether, or might it take on an entirely new look? Here's what the president said about that.
That doesn't mean I wouldn't negotiate a new agreement. We'll see what happens. But I think, if anything, what's happening today and what's happened over the last little while and what we've learned has really shown that I've been 100% right.
100% right, the White House would say, because this is a deal, Sandra, they feel like that was replete with problems, including poor verification mechanisms, a very bad circumstance for possible inspections, lots of ramp-up time for Iran to possibly move some things, to say nothing of the fact it was beyond with a $1.5 billion payout, although to be fair, that was actually Iran's money, Sandra.
Meanwhile, Kevin, there are new questions this morning about what the special counsel may want to ask the president in the Russia probe. What can you tell us about that?
Well, listen, this is a very interesting list in the New York Times as we take a look at it here from the Fox perspective. I think what we're learning, quite frankly, is we're getting a bit of, I think, a clearer picture of what the special counsel's strategy just might be, Sandra. Let me just share some of the questions, and these are interesting. Questions from the president like, was he aware of any campaign outreach to Russia by Paul Manafort? What was his thinking in possibly terminating this special counsel? Has he been a party to any conversation about offering a possible pardon to Mike Flynn, as well as more granular detail about conversations with Michael Cohen, Jared Kushner, and Roger Stone? But while the special counsel probe continues to roll on, the president, at least on Twitter, Sandra, appears to have had enough. Let me take you to his latest tweet about this. So disgraceful that the questions concerning the...
I've worked alongside you as a member of Congress when I traveled. I've had the chance to watch when I was traveling around the world, and I would go into an embassy and I'd arrive late at night, and there were the folks in the political section or the economic section toiling, doing great work on behalf of America. So I have a great deal to learn about the State Department and how we perform our mission. But as people, I'm confident that I know who you are. I know that you came here. You chose to be a Foreign Service officer or a civil servant, or to come work here in many other capacities, and to do so because you're patriots and great Americans, and because you want to be an important part of America's face to the world. My mission will be to lead you and allow you to do that, the very thing you came here to do. I will get to as many parts of this organization as I can. I said in my testimony that I'll spend as little time on the 7th floor. I think it's the 7th floor, right? Yeah. I'll go up there in a minute. I'll travel. I'm going to get out to USAID as quickly as I can to see their important part of our mission as well. I know that every task, every endeavor that each of you undertakes is a critical part of achieving that ultimate objective, which is to deliver President Trump and America's foreign policy around the world, to be the diplomatic face that achieves the outcomes that America so desperately needs to achieve in the world. I've told this story a couple of times, but it's worth repeating. The best lesson I ever got was from a fellow named Sergeant First Class Petrie. He was the first platoon sergeant in my first tank platoon when I was 22 or 23 years old. And I arrived there, and when I hopped out of the Jeep, he said, "Lieutenant, you'll do well to just shut up for a while." And actually, I think he meant that. But what I took him to be saying was that it's important that we listen and learn. And I know that I have an enormous amount to listen to you about and to learn from you. I talked about getting back our swagger, and I'll fill in what I mean by that. But it's important. The United States Diplomatic Corps needs to be in every corner, every stretch of the world, executing missions on behalf of this country, and it is my humble, noble undertaking to help you achieve that. So I look forward. Thank you. I look forward to meeting just as many of you as I can get a chance to do, to learning from just as many of you as I can, and to leading that team onto the field. I know that we will deliver for this president and for this country. Thank you. May the good Lord bless each of you. I'll see you all around the building. Thanks.
Okay, so you can see that was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo there delivering what was very much a respectful pep rally. That's the first time he is addressing his employees there at the State Department, making comments like, at the State Department, we need to get our swagger back, talking about the respect that he has for those employees, calling them patriots and great Americans, saying that his mission is to lead them, that they've made a decision, they're toiling, doing the great work on behalf of the American people. He told the story, when he was told on another mission, Lieutenant, you do well to shut up and listen. Some pretty candid words, but sort of expressing that that's what he's there to do, to listen to them, to lead them, and how much respect he has for them. A totally different tone, we're led to believe, than his predecessor, and we've heard that morale is very low at the State Department right now, and so obviously he's going there, putting a great effort into bringing the troops back together. And this is something that, he's given a lot of credit for, that he is very good at working with people and talking to people, and he's good at sort of the PR aspect of these various jobs, which is sometimes forgotten. Let's bring in Congressman Ted Yoho. He is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and one of the jobs right at the forefront right now has to do with Iran. And these latest developments that we have seen in terms of the evidence that Benjamin Netanyahu put forth 24 hours ago, and how it's received and what we do from here. What do you think, sir?
Melissa, first, thanks for having me on. I think this is a very critical point that we move forward on. What we've seen with Iran, I'm in the camp that it was a very bad deal. It should never have happened. We need to make sure we hold Iran their feet to the fire, that they stay in compliance with the JCPOA. And there's question whether or not they have. One of the things, the intent of the UN security agreements were not to launch ICBMs, and they've done that, the medium range. And so they've overstepped some of those things.
Iranians saying on Twitter and other places where they put out statements since, saying that if the president pulls out of this deal, that they'll be forced to go right back into ramping up their nuclear operations. Do you think that's the equivalent to holding a gun to our heads, and what happens if we give in to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Iran does. I mean, they're the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, bar none. And, here they're doing that same thing again. And they've played a cat and mouse game with us for the last 35 years about developing nuclear weapons. We know they've detonated a nuclear trigger device. I think it was back in 2006 or 2009 at the Parchin military site. And so they've been going down this pathway. This is just another probably a postponement of it, but they're going to get a bomb eventually. I mean, it was laid out in the plans, and we'll have to see how this plays out.
Proponents of the deal say that according to the IAEA that they've complied with this deal. Sure, there were 2 times when they had too much heavy water on hand, but it was barely any, and they moved the water immediately to Amman, Jordan. That they've complied, and to back out now makes the U.S. look like they don't stand behind their word. What do you say to that?
Well, they're getting ready to go over that heavy water again, the production of that. So that's 3 times they'll have bypassed that. And according to the agreement, they shouldn't be doing that. And then you look at the other things that they're doing. They're supplying weapons to Syria. They're bad players, and they're supposed to be operating on good faith. And so this is something I stand with the president. I think Secretary Pompeo is going to do a fantastic job of holding Iran's feet to the fire. And I hope the rest of the world community comes together, because Iran, with a nuclear weapon, or the potential to build one, being the leading state sponsor of terrorism, is a non-starter. And I stand strong with the president on this.
Democrats and people that were in favor of the deal, and even other leaders of other nations, saying that if we pull out of the deal with nothing there in its place, that it sends them off to the races immediately on the path to having a nuclear weapon, that we can't possibly pull this away without something in its place. What do you think of that argument?
Well, I think that's a perfect example why this was a terrible deal. If we walked away, or if Iran decides that we're not honoring our side, they can leave, and there was no restrictions on them. So I think President Trump is smart to go after sanctions on entities that he can outside of the JCPOA, and we look forward to having the other countries that help negotiate this hold on those sanctions with us and put that pressure on Iran.
What do you think should go back in its place, if anything? I mean, do you think that the U.S. should work with? France indicated a little bit of willingness to get together and try and put together a new deal or amend it. I mean, no matter how you mince the words, everybody's sort of talking about replacing this with something else that is more effective. Do you think that's possible, and do you think that's the right move?
Yeah, I think it's possible. And if you look at the sunset clause in there, after 10 years, Iran could do whatever they wanted to. And that should be a non-starter. That should never have been in that negotiations. And so if France or England or any of the other countries can help us get to a point to where Iran does not develop nuclear weapons. We've seen the turmoil nuclear weapons have caused in this world, the arms races it has had. To have another country to have nuclear weapons, I don't think it serves us, anybody in the planet, well. And I would hope that we all stop this.
For a lot of people, they look at the situation that happened with North Korea, and the outcome that it seems like we're moving towards was unthinkable just a couple months ago. Do you think maybe it's a false sense of confidence then that we can turn to this problem and perhaps solve this one as well? Maybe there's too much confidence on the American side right now.
No, I think the way they're handling North Korea is perfect. It's going to go step by step, but it's the beginning of something people, like you said, never thought was possible. And so it's going to take a period of time. The thing that I know this presidency will not do what the other ones did as a mistake is releasing some of the sanctions early. The sanctions need to stay on until a deal is complete. And then after that, we can talk about negotiations and what we're going to release.
Congressman Yoho, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it.
You betcha. Have a great day.
Thanks. The Justice Department is charging nearly a dozen members of a migrant caravan with entering the country illegally amid the ongoing showdown at the southern border. A live report from Tijuana, Mexico. Plus, Fox News is counting down to the GOP Senate primary debate in West Virginia just hours from now. What can we expect? And will Republicans be able to unseat Democratic Senator Joe Manchin in November?
West Virginia is very much Donald Trump country, and they want to have a U.S. Senator who's going to stand there and support President Trump, not be somebody who is supporting Trump.
On West Virginia now, as the 3 top Republican Senate primary candidates prepare to face off in a Fox News debate tonight, with just a week to go until the primary election. The latest Fox News poll shows the candidates in a very tight race amid questions of whether Republicans will be able to unseat Democratic Senator Joe Manchin this November. Peter Ducey is live in Morgantown, West Virginia with the latest. Peter.
Melissa, the former coal baron who also recently did jail time, Don Blankenship, isn't just running against the swamp. He's nicknaming people there, and he's got a new one for the Senate Majority Leader.
One of my goals as U.S. Senator will be to ditch Cocaine Mitch.
According to the Don Blankenship campaign, the nickname Cocaine Mitch grew out of allegations that McConnell's wife, Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao, has relatives who own ships that have been used to traffic drugs. It's the latest in a very personal battle between McConnell and Blankenship. McConnell is linked to super PACs that have spent more than $1.3 million to stop Blankenship from rising to the November ballot. And these attacks, Blankenship thinks, are actually helping him.
I think it probably moves me up a little bit because I don't think that Mitch McConnell realizes how anti-him and how anti the establishment West Virginians are.
There's a reason there's so much national attention on this race, and it's that it's one of the Republicans' best opportunities to flip a Democratic seat. So as conservative heavyweights begin to weigh in, the Attorney General Patrick Morrisey thinks that he gains ground.
I'm emphasizing my record because I'm the only one in the race that has the proven conservative record and the conservative endorsements. I think late last week when Senator Ted Cruz came on board, Senator Rand Paul, obviously all of the major conservative leaders in the state are rallying behind my candidacy.
But Democrats are spending the most, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to try and stop Congressman Evan Jenkins. And Jenkins believes that's because he could stop Democrats from undermining the Trump administration.
Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi want to impeach President Trump. I am standing in their way. They know I am the only one that can defeat Joe Manchin this November.
All the Republican candidates want to appear the closest to President Trump, so expect to hear a lot of boasting about things that people have done to help the administration tonight. Melissa?
Wow, quite a race. All right, thank you so much. The candidates' recent comments could give us a hint about what to expect tonight.
Evan Jenkins is a liberal fraud. Evan Jenkins spent 20 years as a career liberal Democrat supporting Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, rallying for Hillary Clinton.
I'm the only one who's got President Trump's back, been with him from day one, and has a actually proven conservative voting record, 100% pro-life, 100% with the NRA.
I think the big issue in West Virginia is jobs, and I'm the guy that created a lot of jobs in West Virginia, and neither of my candidates or opponents did, I should say, and so I think I'm better positioned to help with jobs.
Go Pack. What do you make of this race? Give me your thoughts.
The Fox News poll, as the GoPac's poll last week showed, this really is a two-person race between the Attorney General Patrick Morrisey and Congressman Evan Jenkins. And the key to this, Melissa, is the fact that Republicans should gain seats in the U.S. Senate this year, and the path goes through West Virginia. We win the seat in West Virginia, Republicans are going to pick up 3 to 4 seats in the U.S. Senate.
Okay, so that is a prediction that is well outside the norm. Where do you see those 3 seats coming from, and why do you see the pickup as opposed to, I mean, you know, the conventional wisdom, which, you know, I know what we all think of conventional wisdom, but nonetheless, has been that the Democrats are going to do very well in these midterms?
You have incumbents in Indiana, in Montana, here in West Virginia, in Missouri, who are all in political cross-currents. They're voting with the Democratic leadership in the Senate when you have electorates in each one of those states who support President Trump's policies, particularly as it comes to the tax cuts, whether it be the government regulations, whether the jobs being created, the foreign policy moves he's making. Voters in every one of those states give favorable ratings to the president for those policies, and the Democrat incumbents are voting just the opposite.
I mean, as someone who looks at polls, what do you make of the fact that a quarter of the electorate there in West Virginia is saying that they are still undecided? Do you believe that to be true, or do you think they just don't want to share who they're going to vote for, or it's a big number? What do you make of it?
It is a big number, and that was a week out, so now you're looking at A week now later, people have made their decisions, and people will make their decisions based off watching the Fox debate tonight. But it's also important to look at where are the early votes coming from. And if you look at where early votes are being cast, they're all in the regions of the state that Patrick Morrisey has traditionally, in his past statewide races, have done very well in, whether that be in the Morgantown area where we are today, whether that be in the Eastern Panhandle where Martinsburg is geographically. And if you look at the numbers, who does Patrick Morrisey do particularly well with? He does well with senior citizens. He does well with those people self-identified as conservatives. All of those folks are the ones who vote in Republican primaries. So it's not surprising, whether it be the Fox poll or the GOPAC poll from last week, that you see this really as a two-person race between Morrisey and Jenkins.
Yeah. Is there any danger to unseating Joe Manchin? In the sense, I understand that a Senate seat to vote is obviously wonderful to pick up. At the same time, Joe Manchin has been a crossover voice, somebody that can argue the case of the Republicans or the president, at least, in some instances, and take it back to his party. There's a value to having that person on the other side. What do you think you give up by unseating him?
You make a good, reasonable point, except for the fact that voters vote on who's going to go and vote the way they want voted. And Senator Manchin, over the last few years, has consistently decided to vote against things like President Trump's tax cuts. He continues to try to do things to win favor with Senator Schumer and the Democratic leadership. And let's also keep in mind, Senator Manchin has now come out that he's interested in looking at a single-payer health care system, something that not only voters here in West Virginia have roundly rejected, but around the country they have rejected as well. So to your point, Manchin isn't a good vote for West Virginia if he's going to keep voting against the things that West Virginia voters ultimately want.
We're looking at the theater where we're going to see this debate later tonight. What are you going to be listening for? What's most important here?
West Virginia is a state that has been hit very hard with the opioid addictions. What are the candidates' answers on that? Now, as you know, Melissa, West Virginia is my home. I'm a native from here. In every election, it has always been about job creation. And if you look at polling, now job creation is the #1 issue to the opioid addiction. And so the candidates have to be talking about that issue. They have to have an answer that voters believe will actually make a difference here in the state.
David Avella, very true. Those were two topics that the president hit very hard early in the campaign, and it worked for him. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. And we want to let all the viewers out there know that you can catch all of the action right here on Fox News, America's election headquarters. The debate starts at 6:30 p.m. tonight, moderated by our own Brett Baer and Martha McCallum, followed by some very hard-hitting analysis. You don't want to miss it. Border inspections allowing some of the caravan migrants seeking asylum to cross into the country for processing, as President Trump is lashing out again at what he calls our weak and ineffective immigration laws. The latest developments now. New developments in the showdown over a caravan of migrants at our southern border. Some of the Central American asylum seekers are being allowed to enter the country for processing. The move ended a brief impasse over lack of space, but those who crossed over still may face a long legal path. This as Attorney General Jeff Sessions ordered the Justice Department to file criminal charges against 11 migrants who are said to have entered the country illegally. William Longinus is live from Tijuana, Mexico with more. William.
Hey, Melissa, I want to give you the lay of the land right now. We are at the busiest port of entry in the country. It's San Ysidro, south of San Diego. And I want to show you behind me. This is the pedestrian entrance right here. And this is where those immigrants likely will go probably in the next 24 to 48 hours. That's what they hope. Anyways, I'm going to show you some video earlier on about the process here. Now, this is where the caravan is camped, just outside the pedestrian gate. As you can see, Rich is showing you right now, there's a lot of media here, and these individuals are hoping, again, that they will be selected, prioritized, if you will, to get an invitation to have an asylum hearing in the U.S. So what they're going to basically do is have an opportunity to tell their story. Looks like they're hearing some information right now from the organizers about how they're going to have to queue up for that. So they're waiting here. They could be here. They were here last night. You can see there's a lot of donations of food and so forth. A lot of blankets. When we arrived here this morning at 5 in the morning, everyone was sleeping. And over on this other location here, I want to show you something interesting. So everyone inside this gate, if you will, they're from the caravan, the Central Americans. But this other group over here, these are Mexicans who were in line and now kind of been pushed to the back of the line by these individuals. But nevertheless, we talked to a couple earlier today from El Salvador, and they are hoping they will be next.
We felt bad because they didn't let them through, but here we are, and I believe and have faith in God that we will get across to the other side.
So I talked to Vice President Mike Pence yesterday about this situation. He acknowledges, of course, is that they have a legal right to a hearing, an asylum hearing in the United States when you have a credible fear claim, like these individuals do. But he's also very concerned about the law, the catch and release law, that he believes encourages more immigration.
Well, we're more than prepared. We have a limited capacity at that border station for asylum seekers. And when the space opens up, we will process those that are seeking asylum under the laws of this country. But these laws have to change.
So one of the laws that he wants to change is that Central Americans would first have to claim asylum in Mexico before they go to the U.S. And if they fail to do that, the U.S. would not be obligated or legally required to give them an asylum hearing, take them into the immigration system. So at this point in time, what will happen is groups, Melissa, of maybe 10 or 20 will leave here from this encampment, and then they'll go to that video I think we showed you. They'll go down that pedestrian walkway just outside the turnstile, within spitting distance of the United States, and then the U.S. will say, okay, we have capacity, we can do your medical interview, we can do your asylum interview, and you can come into the country. Back to you.
So important to show us that other group of people there who is also coming in and kind of pushed out of the way by this caravan. A lot of people want to come here. There you go. All right, William Longinus, thank you so much. Fox News obtaining at least 4 dozen questions that special counsel Robert Mueller wants to ask President Trump. Our panel will weigh in on what to make of the questions and whether President Trump should sit down for an interview with Mueller.
It's online today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Perino. On the Daily Briefing, as we wait to hear from Sarah Sanders, the clock is ticking on President Trump's decision on the Iran deal. Will evidence about Iran raised by Israel's prime minister influence his decision? I'll ask former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice about that and the upcoming talks with North Korea. And as we count down to the West Virginia debate, why money from a Democratic super PAC is being used to help one Republican Senate candidate. Join me at the top of the hour.
Back now to our top story. Special counsel Robert Mueller has at least 4 dozen questions for President Trump that show he wants to learn more about his campaign's potential ties to Russia and whether he obstructed justice. The president says it's, quote, disgraceful that the questions were leaked to the media. Back now from the couch, Fox News contributor and Democratic strategist Jessica Tarlov. Also joining us, Republican strategist Nathan Sproul. Nathan, what do you think of the questions?
Well, I think it takes this investigation to a new level. I think we have a lot more context as to where the investigation is going. It gives an insight into what Mueller's thinking.
Which is what? Obstruction? Or
I think it's obstruction. I think it's a whole host of other things, but specifically the one that puts the president in the most danger is the obstruction charge, for sure.
Jessica, why are we seeing these? I mean, isn't this yet another
We were talking
thing?
about this on the couch today. Why are we seeing it, and who are we seeing it from?
Yeah.
So the Mueller team, they did, as Katie pointed out earlier, they came out a few weeks ago and said, don't believe everything that you're hearing about what's going on in the probe.
So you think these aren't real questions?
I do think that they're real questions that certainly they're considering. We've been talking about them for months and the implications, but as we were also talking about, the way that they're worded doesn't necessarily indicate that this were the high-level lawyers that are part of the Mueller probe writing them, and that's what an analyst who used to work for Bob Mueller said, that these look like someone was taking notes, and we know they spoke to the Trump team in March, so maybe this was leaked by someone with the Trump team and was in their kind of writing.
Nathan, at the same time, the Trump team has had a very good 96 hours. If you were going to leak, this is not the time, I think, when you would leak. They have the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which they benefited from. President Moon in South Korea saying that Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Not the time you would leak these questions.
Unless it seems like a fishing expedition where there's this long range of questions, many of them open-ended, and there's nothing like, you know, here's the smoking gun. When was it that you pulled the trigger?
Yeah, in my opinion is the way that those questions were written, it felt like it was somebody a little bit lower that was trying to gain credibility with a leak as opposed to it being an organized leak from either side.
Yeah.
I do think the does it benefit President Trump question is what's really crucial here, because some of the questions are phrased like, what did you mean when you did this, which allows President Trump to translate from Trump speak into actual
when does he ever do that, though?
But it would give the opportunity, since they're saying this is what they wanted to ask him, and I think that it could make the president bolster his case that he can tweet more about the witch hunt if he's saying, what is this at this point? You said it was collusion. This looks like obstruction of justice. You also have me, I know you're looking at financial crimes. What does this have to do with anything about Russia interfering in the election? So I do think it net benefits him that this is out there.
Nathan, looking at these questions, do you think that he should sit down and do the interview, or should he resist if at all possible?
I don't think he should ever sit down and do the interview in this situation. Bad things happen to good people when you do interviews that you don't necessarily have to do.
Well, but he wouldn't do it unless he had to, right, Jessica?
Well, at this point, remember, he began by saying he wanted to do it, and then he spoke to some lawyers who said maybe that's not a good idea. John Dowd basically quit over this issue.
There we go.
We'll
see. Thanks to both of you. We'll be right back.